I let it harden.
Are you ready?
We're ready. As ready as can be.
Okay.
Sorry. We're playing. Sorry.
So both of you have either been a part of or hosted plenty of play days up to this point. So what would you say are the most important components of a play day?
I think one of the most important components is having a lot of different kinds of opportunities so that kids of different ages and they have an opportunity to do whatever they would like to do, and so I think that's good to have a lot of good stuff out here for them to play with. And then I think planning is good too, don't you?
I think helps, definitely. It definitely helps. I mean, I think for me, probably the big component is kids or whoever. I mean, you gotta get the people and you gotta give them the right opportunities. So having a lot of variety and allows kids to have a lot of different experiences. And the good thing is no kid or adult will have the same experience probably with that same loose part or that same mud. They all have something different. That's kind of cool.
And I think it's important to get the adults to play too, because it's been awesome when the adults can kind of let go and just play and find that kid within, and it is just beautiful to see everyone playing and having a good time, and that's so awesome.
Great. And speaking of adults, what would you say, can you describe a transformation of an adult that may be arriving at their first play days event from the beginning until the end? Does their attitude towards the mud and the risk, does it change throughout the day?
Sometimes it does. We've had adults that come in and they're sort of, oh, that's muddy, I'm not really sure about that, till toward the end of it, they're throwing cardboard boxes on themselves and running around and letting kids chase them with noodles and, digging into the sand and the mud. So I think there is sometimes a transformation as they see the kids play, they become more playful, and they just forget about all those other things that sometimes adults think about. So it's great.
And I think they, going through kind of some education or actually participating, they begin to be less of controlling. So they now allow the kids to decide what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and they actually take a step back and kind of watch in amazement, and then may have parallel play. They may play next to or with, but don't tell them how to do it.
Right.
Which is kind of neat to see that.
And that's one thing we try to do, is try to talk to the parents a little bit, or the teachers, to kind of give them some background and have them really think about how they might approach and support the play process when they're with the kids, and maybe do it a little bit different than perhaps they've done it before.
Great. Well, I guess last thing, for those organizations out there that might be planning to host a Play Days event next year, what tips, if you had to give them 2 or 3 most important tips to planning their Play Days, what would it be?
I would say one thing would be location, to really think about the location. This is a great location. There's a lot of variety in the landscape. There's a lot of opportunities for fort building, for shade, for running around, and like I said before, I think planning is a good thing to really plan. Makes it much easier the day of, I think.
Yeah, and the way I approach play days, and maybe would suggest others to approach play days, is kind of think of the components you want in a play day. I think we all don't have the opportunities to have really beautiful spaces or really big spaces, but do with what you have, and it can be as 10 minutes to a day to a weekend. It can be as complicated or as not as complicated as possible, and bring in some key components like nature. I mean, it's key to have natural elements. Bring in just play. Have a concept of play involved in what it is you want to do, and then understand. Maybe the third is kind of the risk and challenge. Like, don't be so worried about. Think about safety and planning, but don't be so worried about the risk and challenge that kids will take, because that's what builds the play experience. And I'll have to confirm with Linda. Planning ahead of time is really good to ensure that you got the best opportunities.
Right.
But when you're out here, every play day probably can get better every time you do it.
Absolutely.
So the bottom line is, don't let all the planning stop you from doing it. Just do it, and then get better each time.
Just start small, just like you're saying. Just start small, have those components, and then you can build on it from then on. And it's great. Yes.
Great.
Play on.